Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to our monthly knowledge series. Last two sessions, we were exclusively on the GST. And as I mentioned in the last session, we would start introducing back the technology at next level. And today we are going to do little bit on use of the AI that is available today. And especially we finance professionals, we care a lot about the reporting, right? That's what we do to the management and others. That's what we are going to do in the second half. First half of the session with me is Ashika, who would be taking us through reverse charge mechanism and its implications. We are at the beginning of the financial year 25-26, and in the last session we have discussed about what are the key things that one has to look or take care in closing of the financial year. One important aspect is reverse charge. Now we all know that the GST is always leviable on the supply, which is on the sales or the income that is there. However, you also have an obligation to pay tax on a reverse charge, and timely compliance of it saves a lot. First, you would be eligible for input. Second, you will not be penalized for delay by way of interest. And God forbid, department wants to choose it under a fraud and intentional evasion, 100% penalty. Yeah. So today's session, we are going to cover what are all the reverse charge liabilities that are there for a corporate that needs to take care of, and how do we comply that. And we are also looking at the other implications associated to it in terms of timely reporting, availment of credit, and procedural aspect. With this, I would introduce Ashika to the first part of the session, and I'm there throughout, and feel free to ask the question. In every session, I invite people to put your questions because you're here to learn something, and when you go back, all your doubts needs to be clarified. Yeah. On this note, Ashika, over to you. You can start.
Thank you. So me and Hitesh will be taking to you through the basic provision of the RCM. Plus, we will be also going to the various services and goods which is covered under RCM. So let's start, Hitesh.
Yeah. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is. Just that voice is little low.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's better.
yeah. So the topic which we have chosen today is reverse charge mechanism under GST. Reverse charge, to understand this, we'll go through the session in the following pattern. First, we'll understand the legal framework. Then we will be talking about the tax payment and the ITC eligibility. Post that, we'll be looking at how do we account and report such RCM transactions. After that, we'll be discussing the recent updates and clarifications which we have received from the CBIC pertaining to reverse charge provisions. And lastly, we will be touching upon the common errors and the audit issues which still after 7.5 years of implementation of GST, it is being done by the taxpayers pertaining to reverse charge. Now coming to basic provision. Normally, GST, it is passed on from person to person. The ultimate recipient pays the tax to the government. So, like when we tax it on forward charge basis, then the supplier is liable to pay the taxes. In case of reverse charge, what happens is that the mechanism changes its way. In this case, the supplier is not liable to pay taxes to the government, but it is the recipient who is liable to pay the taxes to the government. What the recipient does, it makes the payment without tax to the supplier, and it directly pays the tax on behalf of the supplier to the government. The levying section for the reverse charge is Section 9 of the CGST Act, specifically speaking 9(3), which states that the government, on recommendations of the council, may specify certain goods and services on which taxes will be charged on reverse charge basis. Another important levying section for reverse charge is 9 subsection 4, whereby specified registered persons are liable to pay tax under reverse charge basis for procuring goods from unregistered persons. Moving ahead. Now, what is the compliance requirements in case of reverse charge? In case I have to incur a reverse charge liability, be it pertain to any goods or services, for me, it is mandatory to be registered under GST. This provision comes under Section 24 of the CGST Act, whereby mandatory registration has been specified in case I am a person who is liable to pay tax under reverse charge mechanism. So, irrespective of my threshold, based upon the state where I am conducting my business, be it 20 lakhs or 40 lakhs, if I am incurring any reverse charge liability in my business, I am required to get myself compulsorily registered. The second important thing is to note the mode of payment of reverse charge. We all know that the reverse charge liability is only paid through e-cash ledger and not through e-credit ledger. The portal itself will not allow to pay the RCM liability through the e-credit ledger. Now, some entries, coming to the exemption part, some entries are there which have been specifically exempted. If it is specifically exempted for forward charge, that means it is also equivalent to exempted under reverse charge as well. The input tax credit part, when can we avail the reverse charge ITC? When we make the payment. Can we claim all the reverse charge ITC? No. For claiming reverse charge ITC, we need to make sure that we have made the payment of taxes, and also we need to make sure that whatever input we are claiming, that is not restrictive in nature, which is specified under Section 17 subsection 5 of GST Act.
So over here, basically, what we are trying to say is that under RCM, liability is there irrespective of the fact whether you are engaged in providing 100% exempt supply of goods or service, or you are engaged in providing the taxable supply. However, you are not registered, your turnover being below the threshold limit. So irrespective of those facts, even though if you are receiving any notified goods or services which are covered under RCM, you have to pay the tax, you have to take a registration, and you have to do the compliances respectively. Further, in this case, unlike when we do as a provider, as a service provider or a supplier of goods, when we provide our goods or we supply our goods, we are eligible to claim ITC and use that ITC against our output tax liability. However, when it comes to RCM, here there is no provision to utilize ITC. All payment you have to do through cash only. And after making the payment in the cash, in the same month, you can avail the ITC. But obviously, availment of ITC is subject to the condition of Section 16 and 17. Another important point it to be noted is, as some goods or services, if covered under RCM, if there is an exemption when it is provided, even recipient will also be eligible for such exemption, which Hitesh will be taking to you one by one when he will be discussing one services. So if when a provider is providing any service or goods which is exempted, even though if it is covered under RCM, that exemption will still be relevant and you won't be liable to pay tax even under RCM.
Now, coming to the invoicing part. In case of forward charge, it is very simple that the supplier issues a tax invoice, and if the tax invoice is issued in accordance with the conditions mentioned in section 16 and as well as the rules prescribed in rule 46, then we are eligible to claim the credit. But for reverse charge, what we need to do? Now, in case of reverse charge, first we need to see whether we have availed the goods or service from a registered supplier or from an unregistered supplier. If we have availed such goods or service on which tax is payable on reverse charge basis, then the onus to issue an invoice also lies on the recipient. That concept takes the term of self-invoicing. So in case of receipt of goods or services from an unregistered supplier, the concept of self-tax invoice generates in GST. So in case we are to claim the credit of reverse charge ITC, reverse charge taxes, then we need to have a self invoice generated in respect of each such supply. Secondly, payment voucher. When we make the payment to the unregistered supplier, we need to issue a payment voucher. That document is also required for claiming of ITC. Now coming to registered supplier, if we take any goods or services from a registered supplier, then it is but obvious that the supplier will be giving us an invoice whereby he must have been mentioning that this supply is meant for payment under reverse charge basis. So based on that tax invoice, we can claim the ITC provided we have paid the RCM taxes. In this case, the onus on the recipient is only to issue a payment voucher. No self invoice is required to be generated.
The purpose of discussing over here is the common confusion the people are having or misunderstanding. Now, if there has been a case that where people are saying you have to raise self-tax. Fine. As a recipient, when I am liable to pay under RCM, I have to raise self-tax invoice. Now, the question which arises, for every RCM, do I need to raise self-tax invoice? Or I have to raise only for when the supply is received from unregistered person. So this is very specifically mentioned in the Act, where you are receiving from a registered person. Then obviously when they issue you a tax invoice which is in compliance with GST. And if you will refer to Rule 46, which basically provide what are the items or what are the contents should be there in tax invoice, over there is one specific line, that is whether the tax is payable under RCM or not. So when a registered supplier is issuing, he is issuing a tax invoice. And in that tax invoice, this line will be mentioned. And if the supply which he has made is covered under RCM, then he has to specifically write it whether tax payable under RCM? Yes. So over there, you already got a document which is in compliance under GST. Therefore, you are not required to raise a self-tax invoice. But when you receive from an unregistered person, they doesn't issue you any document which is in accordance with the GST law. So therefore, the GST provide you a provision to raise a self-tax invoice, and it need to be done only in case of receipt of unregistered supply received from unregistered person. Anyhow, if you are receiving from registered, there will be tax invoice. Data will be also auto-populated in your GSTR 2B showing RCM yes. Now, second thing, which as a recipient, you have to do compliance for the purpose of RCM is payment voucher. And payment voucher is to be issued irrespective of the fact whether it is from registered or unregistered. Self-tax invoice, unregistered. Payment voucher in both the conditions, registered or unregistered. In both the cases, you have to raise the payment voucher. So that's the clarity we are trying to bring so that people should not have a misunderstanding that irrespective of from whom the supply is received, I am required to raise self-tax invoice. Answer is no. Now, second thing. Now, earlier, under GST, though law provides the self-tax invoice to be issued. However, the thing was that there was no time period, which they have specifically now provided. So now self-tax invoice need to be raised within 30 days from the date of receipt of goods or services. Now, what will happen if you don't raise? Obviously, there will be a consequence and general penalty will be suffered. Third point over here is, do I need to raise one by one invoice or can I do a consolidated invoice at the end of the month? Earlier under GST, they have specifically provided that I have the option to raise one consolidated self-tax invoice after the month. So in a month, I can raise one self-tax invoice covering all my RC. However, that has now been removed. As that has been removed, it's mean there should be one-to-one self-tax invoices for each unregistered supply you are receiving. However, even if you are issuing a consolidated, just make sure that self-tax invoice contain the relevant particular, which is more or less like a tax invoice only. And there you also specify the description, basically the nature of expenses on which you are paying under RC. And this record is need to be maintained for your internal purpose, because the system which you are using for books of account will not be generating those documents. However, for your internal purpose, you can separately maintain that in a soft copy Excel sheet or Word document. So whenever the department comes, you can show them.
Yeah. This 30-day time limit has been recently introduced in the GST law via insertion of Rule 47A in the CGST rules, and this has come into effect from 1st November 2024. So post 1st November 2024, if you are not issuing the self invoice within 30 days, then you are liable for the penal consequences under the GST law. Now comes the time of supply. With regard to time of supply, in case of goods, the time of supply is the earlier of these three dates. First is the payment date, or the second is the 31st day from the date of supplier invoice or the self-invoice document, and the date of receipt of goods. Whichever is earlier, that is the time of supply in case of receipt of goods which are taxed under reverse charge mechanism. In case of services, there has been a bifurcation between registered supplier and unregistered supplier. In case of registered supplier, it is earlier of payment date or the 61st day of invoice date, because if the supplier is registered in case of service and he is giving you an invoice, then from that invoice date you need to check 61st date, or in case you have made the payment before such date, then on such payment date of making such payment, your RCM liability accrues. But in case you are receiving service from an unregistered supplier, then the time of supply will be earlier of the 3 days, the payment date, the self tax invoice date, or the 61st day of the invoice date, whichever is earlier.
This bifurcation is not there under GST law, but the way the time of supply has been has been given for service, we have divided into registered and unregistered. If you will see the table part over there, it is said earlier of three: payment date, 61st date of supplier invoice date, or whatever document the supplier has issued, or self-tax invoice. Now, in the previous slide only, we discussed that time limit to issue self-tax invoices 30 days from date of receipt of goods or service. So if you see the three conditions which has been given earlier on, out of that three, self-tax invoice, as we discussed, would arise only in case of unregistered supplier. That's the reason, for ease of discussion, we have divided this into registered and unregistered. Because in case of registered, there will be no self-tax invoice. Therefore, only first 2 points will come: payment date and 61st date. But in case of unregistered supplier, there will be all the 3 points. Because even though supplier is unregistered, but may not be a tax invoice under GST, but they will be definitely issuing some document for their record purpose, their accounting purpose, not under GST, but other acts, income tax acts and other law, they have to do the compliances. So under unregistered, there will be three will come due to raising of self-tax invoice. So that's the reason we divided into two for discussion, though the way the law says is what is covered under the table.
Okay. Next comes the ITC part. So for claiming ITC, the document which is required is obviously the tax invoice, be it you receive from the registered supplier or be it the self invoice which you have generated as per the section 31 subsection 1. Now, when can we avail such ITC? We can avail such ITC in the same month in which we have made the tax payment of the RCM liability. Is there any time limit for RCM ITC? Yes, there is very specifically a time limit for RCM ITC, which is prescribed in 16.4. You need to claim it in you need to claim it before earlier of the two dates, which is 30th November of the immediately succeeding financial year or the date of filing annual return, whichever is earlier. Now comes the applicability. To what is RCM applicable? RCM is applicable in case of notified goods and services. It is applicable if you are receiving supplies from unregistered persons, and it is also applicable in case of import of goods or services. Notified goods and services come under 9 subsection 3. Supply from unregistered persons comes under 9 subsection 4, and import comes under the provisions of IGST Act. Now we will start with the most important part of RCM discussion, which is RCM on services. Because goods, there is a specified list, on such specific goods only RCM will be applicable. But in practical life, as we see day in and day out, that mostly RCM is applicable on service transactions rather than on goods transactions. So these are the major services which come under the RCM scenario, which have been notified through a notification, the principal notification being 13/2017, which has been amended which has been keeping on being amended till date. So the major services which are highlighted in blue, these are the services which come into common day-to-day business practices. The first one being the GTA, goods transport agency, second one legal, third one sponsorship, renting of movable property. Many recent changes have come into this sector in the very recent past, which we will be covering in detail. With regard to real estate sector, TDR means transfer of development rights and long-term lease. With regard to services received services received by corporates, being the director services, the security services, and renting of motor vehicle, which many corporates often do for providing cab facility services to their employees. All these services come into day in day out practice of the corporates, and it is very important to understand to what extent is RCM applicable on these services. Let's begin with Good Transport Agency. Now GTA has two options. The government has given two options to the GTA. The one option is he can either opt for forward charge mechanism. If he opts for that, then there is no question of reverse charge mechanism. The other part is even in forward charge, he can opt for two rates, whereby if he opts for 5%, he is not allowed to claim any ITC, but if he opts for 12%, he is allowed to claim ITC. Now, in case GTA does not opt for forward charge and he opts for reverse charge, then GTA, whatever service he is providing, if the service recipient comes under these categories, which have been mentioned in the notification itself, and if you see the point there, like any person registered under GST Act, which means if you are availing any service from a GTA and you are registered under the GST Act, and if the GTA is not charging any GST, this in itself implies that you are liable to pay the taxes under reverse charge basis. Now, what is the rate at which you are liable to pay the taxes? It is 5%. The other specified categories of persons who are given specifically in the notification: factory society, cooperative society, or body corporate partnership firm. In case you are registered, you are liable for reverse charge payment if you avail service from GTA. GTA has been defined, consignment note has been defined, and they have also given that RCM is not applicable in case of individuals and HF who are unregistered. If the GTA has charged forward charge, if GTA has opted for forward charge, then that implies that GTA is paying the taxes to the government and you need not pay the taxes on his behalf. And if he is transporting such goods which are covered under the exemption notification, then also you are not liable to pay RCM.
Now, if you see, in the past, there have been a lot of issues. There has been a cases where the GTA services has been procured and GTA has charged GST on the same. You have paid the tax to the supplier and supplier has paid tax to the government. However, while doing audits or while doing the enforcement proceeding, it has been noticed that department officer, even though the cases where tax has already been paid to the supplier, but as it is mentioned in RCM notification, they were asking us to pay a fee. Now, GTA was the most common of it, where GTA were either charging 5% or 12%. They have the two options. Now, where the GTA were charging 5%, over there, department was not allowing us or not agreeing the fact that there will be a double taxation if they collect. Reason being, earlier the notification says that GTA should not charge GST at the rate of 12%. So they were going purely by the term used in RCM, which says that you should not charge 12%. So even though 5% has been charged and collected, officer were insisting, even though you paid to the GTA, it doesn't matter to me, you are liable to pay under RC. Now it's a welcome move. 2 years back only, under GTA, the government has said that the GTA has to provide in writing a letter stating that whether they are going for a FCM, that is forward charge mechanism, or they are going for a RCM, reverse charge mechanism. So who are into this industry, transport industry, they were required to give this declaration. And based on that declaration, the things will proceed. So if a transporter has to forward charge, under forward charge, what rate they use, 5, 12, doesn't matter. So if they have choose forward charge, then as a recipient, we were not liable to pay the tax on the same under us. And where the GTA has used choose RCM, obviously over there also they need to give the declaration. And as we discussed, the tax invoice, where it will be mentioned that it need to be paid under RCM. If you will notice, these provisions are similar to what were there under pre-GST regime. Under service tax regime also, on a consignment note, the GTA used to write that tax need to be paid by the person consigning or the person who is paying the freight. The similar pattern they have carried forward under GST also. But with this option, there will be clarity at both the sides. Provider will also know what option he has choose, FCM, RCM, which he can also give to you as a proof that this is the option he has chosen, and accordingly, either you are liable under RCM or not. First. Second, this option was to be chosen every year under GTA. However, now they have said option 1 exercise will be considered to be followed until and unless it is revoked. So if anybody of you are under GTA service provider, then you have to do this declaration. and it is a one-time declaration. However, if you want to change your pattern to FCM to RCM or RCM to FCM, then you need to resubmit that declaration. But it need to be noted, this declaration is only limited to FCM or RCM. It does not relate to the rate opted by GT, 5% or 12%. Provider has a two rate, 5 or 12, but as a recipient, you are liable to pay GST at the rate of 5% only. So this is what I want to add for GST, GTO point.
Yeah, moving ahead, these are the list of the services which are covered under the exemption notification with respect to the GTA. If the service is provided to an unregistered person, an unregistered casual taxable person, being individual HF, department or establishment of central government, local authority, and government agencies. Next comes the legal service. In case you have obtained a legal service from a lawyer, individual lawyers.
One more thing, previous slide. One more thing, earlier for GTA, there was a two exemption which most of the people were using. Is about 750 per load and 1500 per truck. Now this is not there. So no 750, 1500 exemption, whatever may be the transportation charges, even 100 rupees. If paid to GTA, you are liable to pay tax under RCM. This also need to be kept in mind. Another point, paid to GTA, when I say, you have to distinguish between an individual lorry owner and a transport company. As Hitesh was discussing in the previous slide, that to be a GTA, you should qualify the condition that you should provide a service, transport of goods by road, plus you should be issuing a consignment note. Both these conditions satisfied, then only it's a GTA. Though there is a long debate that by issuing non-issuance of consignment note, can we say we are not liable to pay under RCM? Will not go into that dispute, but because as whatever tax paid under RCM is eligible as ITC, it's better to pay instead of going into litigation. But however, if there are some individual lorry owner, tempo you have hired, then no need to pay under RCM, but maintain a proper record of it. Over to you.
Moving to legal service part. If you have availed any legal service from advocate, senior advocate, or a firm of advocate, and you being the recipient, you are a business entity, then you are liable to pay GST at the rate of 18% on reverse charge basis. What's important is to note that legal service, it includes any advice consultancy, and it also includes the representational services before any court or tribunal. So if you are paying any hearing fees to any lawyer to appear on the behalf of your entity to represent your case and to fight for your case, there also you are required to pay taxes under reverse charge. Now, exemption. If the legal services are provided to an advocate or partnership firm providing legal services, if it is provided to any person other than a business entity, and if it is provided to a business entity with an aggregate turnover of 20 to 40 lakhs, or it is provided to any government entity, central government, state government, local authority, etc. Then in such cases, you are not liable to pay GST for legal services availed. Next, coming to the sponsorship service. With regard to sponsorship service, there has been a very recent change in the category who will be the supplier in case of sponsorship service. Very recently, the CBIC came up with a notification, central tax rate notification, whereby they actually amended the provisions of supplier in case of sponsorship service. Earlier, supplier would be any person. If he is providing sponsorship service, then it would be under the ambit of reverse charge, provided the recipient is a partnership firm or a body corporate. But with the amendment recently made through central tax notification, rate notification, the definition of supplier, the scope of supplier has now been limited to any person other than body corporate. Means if any body corporate is providing any kind of sponsorship services to any other body corporate or a partnership firm, then the recipient body corporate or the partnership firm is not liable to pay GST under reverse charge for such sponsorship services received. So in case suppose ABC Limited is providing sponsorship services to XYZ Limited, then XYZ Limited is not liable to pay RCM. Now, what is the scope of service which is included in the sponsorship service? It includes naming the event, displaying the company logo, giving sponsor exclusive booking rights, sponsorship prizes. If you sponsor any prizes for any event, that also is included under the scope of RCM. The rate applicable is 18%. This is the definition of person which has been given in the GST law. So it includes every possible thing in this universe here. And now coming to the exemption part, these are the exemptions which have been prescribed. So if anyone falls under these exemption lists, then you are not liable to pay reverse charge under the for availing sponsorship services. Now coming to government service. For government service, yeah,
Can you just go back to the sponsorship?
yes.
One more slide back.
Hmm.
One more. Yeah. See, this is one common area where people make mistakes, is especially when some events are happening. When you're part of the trade body, trade associations conduct some fests and events, and you will contribute the money there. In your books of accounts, you are recording this as your business promotion and advertisement expenditure. You might feel that you are not sponsoring this event. So it is a very thin line of difference between advertisement, business promotion, and sponsorship. You will notice that they have asked you to please pay 35,000 rupees. This would be towards the high tea. Or you pay 1 lakh rupees, this would cover our so and so. Now, generally, in most of the events, there would be a price that would be set. Sometimes the organizers would treat this as an advertisement service or facilitation, hall entry charges, or whatever. Sometimes the organizers treat this as a service provided to you. Sometimes organizers would say that, see, look, I am conducting an event, you are sponsoring this event. Now, the sponsorship may come with an opportunity for you to display your name, maybe, may not be, certain things. So it's very important for you to look at the invoice, and when you are treating this expenditure, like you are providing the sponsorship service, like you are paying the amount, and RCM is always from the recipient side. So the recipient has incurred the expenditure without any GST. This is under reverse charge. Generally, the sponsorship services would get unnoticed because the bill has come, someone has approved, and you're creating one advertisement and business promotion cost. Reverse charge means what clicks to the people is legal and GTA, which is quite common. It was there from the erstwhile service tax era, including the sponsorship. But what triggers to the people, the moment you say RCM, it is GTA and legal. This is one area. Most of the times people have not complied with. That is where I want you to make a special attention to it. Yes, Hitesh, you can proceed.
Okay, thank you, sir. Now coming to the government services. So if in case of government services, if my supplier is central government, state government, union, union territory or the local authority, then the recipient is a business entity, then what will happen that all the services received from the government will be taxable under reverse charge basis at the rate of 18%. What's important here is there is a exemption, there is a threshold exemption. Like if the service cost is below 5,000, then it is not liable to be paid under reverse charge basis. Now, what all scope of services included in this? That renting of immovable property, that concept has been segregated. There's a separate line towards that concept. In case you are renting any immovable property from any government entity, and in case you are receiving any services from Department of Post or Ministry of Indian Railways, all those are also not covered under the RCM provisions. In case you are receiving any service in relation to aircraft or vessel or transport of goods or passengers, then also you are not liable to pay any reverse charge on such services, provided such services are received from central government, state government, local authority or the like. Now, when we come to the renting of immovable property, what is important here is to note that the recipient here should be a registered person. In case I am unregistered and I am renting an immovable property, irrespective of the nature, be it commercial or residential, the property is a government property. Like the handholding of the property is with the government, then I am not liable to pay GST under reverse charge basis. If I am liable to pay GST, it is only when I am renting an immovable property from any government authority and I myself am registered under GST. Only in such cases I will be liable to pay GST with respect to renting of immovable property from any government or central government, state government or local authority.
Over here, this is also a most common service which we don't realize that there will be some or the other expenses which is in relation to service provided by government you have incurred. Now, if you see in Bangalore, if you will see everywhere where the BMTC is there, above that is a building constructed, which is basically firstly occupied by the government officer, and after that, few top floors are given to other corporates, companies, or whoever as the person has taken on the rent. Now, this being one type of renting of immovable property, where if you are located in a government building and where you are paying rent to a government, then you are liable to pay tax under RCM. Further, as whatever tax paid under RCM, you will be eligible for ITC. Now, there may be other expenses. Other expenses like suppose for safety of the employees. Now, if it is a factory and all, there will be a checking for electricity inspection. Other expenses are also incurred. So for those expenses, which is for the safety or testing measure for which is for the welfare of the employee, those are specifically exempted, like boiling charges. So on those, even though it is provided by a government, you are not liable to pay tax under RC, being specifically exempted. Then comes your another common is royalty. Mining on royalty was a long dispute as it was going on that it is a tax on tax. However, now it has been settled down. Now it has been held that royalty is not a tax on tax. Therefore, on mining, if you are into a business where royalty is being paid to government, start paying tax under RCM and claim the ITC. Then there are also other expenses which we incurred, like your trade license, ROC fee, which Hitesh will be taking us through.
Moving ahead. Moving ahead, these are the relevant definitions of the central government, state government, and the local authority. This is again a governmental authority and a government entity which has been defined under the GST law. This is the definition of business, what constitutes a business in GST. Now, here we will need to see whether RCM is applicable on these services or not. Provided by government authority or government to means any government authority is providing any service to another government entity, then it is covered under the exemption. Fine and penalty imposed for breaking law, it is also not liable for reverse charge. It is covered under exemption. No tax on tax, professional tax. I mean, when we are paying professional taxes to the state government, professional tax being a state jurisdiction concern, we are not liable to pay reverse charge on such taxes even. Now, whether the trade license, the court fees paid, whether these are subject to RCM, ma'am, if you consider this part.
If you see, like the definition, provider is covered central government, state government, local authority. So these are the covered. Now, when you see court fee is paid to the court, that is Supreme Court, High Court, which does not form part of the government. Therefore, it will not be covered under RC. Now, coming to the part of trade license, now there has been an issue, like I told you. Once Hitesh, can you go to next slide? So over here, these are the various exemptions which has been provided for services received from government. Now, if you will see, one is bold mark, registration, testing, calibration, safety check. So obviously you have to see whether you fall under this exemption or not. If you fall under exemption, as we already in the starting of our session, we said, if you fall under exemption, even if it is covered under RCM, you are not liable to pay. Now, one part of this exemption, it says registration. Now, trade license, factory license is are the type of license, though we have to take license on a renewable basis every year. But when we see registration mostly happen one time. So there is a dispute whether it will be covered or not. But if you will see, at the end, it is also said including fire license. So in our opinion on those, you should not be paying under RCM, but seeing the cost involvement, you can decide, pay the tax and claim the ITC. Coming to ROC fee, now ROC fee also you have to see if it is below 5K. Now 5K need to be checked on a each transaction level, not on a cumulative basis. So if it is a below 5K, then you are not liable. But then comes the registration for increase in authorized capital, where company has to incur a huge cost. On that, I don't feel being in the nature of subscription, it should not be liable under RC. But however, obviously there is a dispute that ROC fee should be covered or not. So based on the business, means if you belongs to an industry where your 100% or maximum of the supplies which you are making are taxable, it's better to pay the tax and claim the ITC instead of going into litigation. But however, if you are into a industry where your supply is 100% exempted, then obviously it will be a cost and there you have to take the form. Now for government service, you need to check for 5,000, which is, I'm just saying the main exemption, 5,000 is registration testing. Plus you can see if you are a business entity with below 20 lakh or 40 lakh, this below the threshold limit, then you don't require to pay under RC.
Moving forward, now coming to the renting of immovable property. This has been one sector whereby there have been multiple changes in the recent years with regard to RCM applicability. First of all, let's classify the immovable property into two parts. First part being the residential dwelling and the second part being the commercial dwelling. Now we need to check, we need to know that in case I am letting out a residential dwelling to any unregistered person, then it was exempt from day one since the GST came into picture. Now, when residential dwelling was being let out to any registered person, then very recently, around 2 years back, on from 18th July 2022, this entry came into the purview of RCM that if the supplier is providing any residential dwelling to any registered person, then such registered person was became liable to pay GST under reverse charge basis on at the rate of 18%. Yes, ITC is also available once we have paid the taxes. With commercial property, even if it was let out to a registered person, it was not covered under the purview of RCM till 8th October 2024. With effect from 9th October 2024, this entry also came under the purview of RCM. The government basically brought in this entry under the purview of RCM to to increase the GST collections, to widen the scope of RCM collection, and to increase the government revenue through RCM collections. What was happening was a lot of people who are engaged into the trading businesses, they have a lot of warehouses and godowns, and which they get it on rented basis from people who are unregistered under the GST. So in order to collect revenue, in order to remove the loss of revenue from such transactions, the government brought this entry also into the scope of RCM, thereby broadening the tax base. And this has been the very recent amendment. It is very important for us before we finalize our books of accounts for the financial year 24-25 that we do cross check that whether any rental expense which has been booked in our books of accounts, whether they have been incurred to any unregistered person. If they have been incurred to any unregistered person, and if that rental expense belongs to a commercial property, then we ought to have discharged the RCM liability at the rate of 18% and claim subsequent ITC as well.
So if you will see, whenever we are discussing, we are not just focusing on the service involved. We are also focusing on who is the provider, who is the receiver. So in case of RCM, it's just not limited to the service involved. So you need to be careful that even the person who is providing and the person who is receiving also get the condition fulfilled in order to be payable under RCM. Because there may be a situation that even though, let's take the example of sponsorship service, which we recently discussed. Now in sponsorship service, if a provider is a body corporate, then RCM is not applicable. If a provider is other than body corporate, then you have to check your recipient, because it will be applicable only when recipient is a body corporate. So when we see provider, it is saying it should be other than body corporate. But when it comes to recipient, it is saying it should be a body corporate. So that's why you need to be very much careful. Just because there is a sponsorship expense under your profit and loss account, you have accounted, it doesn't mean you are immediately liable to pay under us. You have to also see the condition, who is providing and who is the recipient. When all the three conditions are satisfied, then only you are liable under us. Like similarly in this immovable property also. If you will see the way it is plotted, the first part, supplier. Supplier, it can be any person. When it says any person, it is too wide. It can be registered also, it can be unregistered also. Similarly is the commercial unregistered person. So when it is a residential dwelling, it doesn't matter. The person is registered or unregistered. But when it comes to commercial property, they themselves are saying it should be from unregistered person. Because if it is from a registered person, commercial property, it is duly liable under tax and there is no exemption. So obviously your supplier being registered would be charging GST from you, collecting and paying it to government. But when it comes to residential dwelling, as there is a specific exemption under GST, when residential dwelling used for residential purpose is specifically exempted. That's the reason they have used the word any person under the supplier head. But when it comes to recipient on residential dwelling, they are limited the RCM liability to registered person. So if residential dwelling is been let out by any person to a registered person, then only RCM. But if it's let out to an unregistered person, then it is not under RCM because it is specifically exempted. Even though my provider is registered, then also it will be exempted if it is provided to unregistered person for residential dwelling or residential use. So if all these condition is satisfied, then only. Now, another thing which need to be noted in residential dwelling is what is happening, why the registered person is coming into picture. Now, most of the time it has been seen that companies, they take house, guest house, flats for their employee or for their director. And the invoice is raised by landowner directly on the company. And that company being registered, even though it is a residential dwelling used for residential purpose, then also GST is applicable and it need to be paid under RC. You might be saying why it has been done. Anyhow, it's for residential purpose, but intention is very clear of the government, like what Hitesh highlighted. Now, the second part is about the ITC. Now, here we have written ITC available, but still department may disallow for residential dwelling. Why? Because it is being used for personal consumption of employee. That is what the department contention will be, that it is being used for personal consumption because he is staying there. But the thing is that company doesn't do anything for the personal use of their employee. Whatever is been done is done in the use and course of the business. Therefore, we believe ITC should be allowed. However, obviously there will be a debate because department is going to go through block credit. But when it comes to commercial property, there is a good thing that they have excluded composite dealer. So because there are small people, like he said that multiple people take rents. So it's a good thing if you are a composite dealer, then even though you have received from unregistered person, you won't be liable to pay tax under RCM. However, under commercial, there is no exemption. However, for residential dwelling, as I said, it's used for residential purpose and it's by unregistered person, then there is a specific exemption for it. So that needs to be taken care. Then comes the issue of hostel camp house. Though it is not directly in relation to it, but who are in this business, if we see, hostel is also for residential purpose only, though it can't be fully said to be a residential dwelling because their registration happened as a commercial property under Municipality Act. So, however, now for that also there is a specific exemption they have given under GST. So if 25K per month is there, then on hostel and all, there will be no GST. Over to you.
Yeah. With regard to this commercial property letting out, initially when this was brought under GST, the exemption to composition dealers was not available. Initially, the recipient was only the term registered person was there in the recipient. This other than composite dealer has been recently amended in the latest CGST rate notifications, whereby they have extended the exemption to the composition dealers, thereby giving a huge relief to them, whereby they are not liable to pay huge amount of GST for renting of immovable property, which is commercial in nature. Next comes our directed service. Any company which is receiving any services from its director, it is liable to pay tax under reverse charge mechanism in GST at the rate of 18%, which has been prescribed. Now, there was a big confusion in this, which was later on clarified by the CBIC, that in case of director's remuneration, director's remuneration is a very common expenditure which every corporate books in its books of accounts. So in case of director remuneration, if the director is an executive director of the board and he is receiving remuneration on which TDS under Income Tax Act is being deducted under Section 192, then it is not liable for RCM. However, if there is certain director who are non-executive directors or independent directors who are being paid board meeting sitting fees and TDS on such transactions is being deducted under 194J, then in such cases RCM is applicable.
Now, if we see that, like over here, Schedule 3, employer-employee relationship is specifically excluded. However, just because in RCM notification, any service from director is mentioned, even though there exists an employer-employee relationship, department were demanding RCM liability. However, this is a welcome clarification where they said if you have disclosed and you have deducted TDS under 192, then we will not demand RCM liability. We'll treat it as employer and employee. But however, you have to check for director if there is any other charges you are paying, sitting fee, or any other professional charges you are paying apart from salary. Then on those, you might be liable to pay under RCM. But all will depend upon case to case basis. Another thing which I want to highlight is if you will see how the wording is used in the notification. Service supplied by a director of a company or a body corporate. So the way it is worded, it seems that any service which is provided by a director. Now over here, the dispute which was happening is whether it will be the service which is provided in the director capacity or it will cover all the service which is provided by the director. Now, not recently, but by way of Circular 201, the government has clarified that only the services which is provided in the capacity of the director is what is covered under RC, not what has been provided in personal capacity. Just for example, it has been noticed in the past where there has been a cases where the company is running, that property is owned by the director and they were paying rent to the director. Now, when the director is earning this rent, it is not earning this rent in the capacity of the director. They are earning this rent being the owner of that property. So even though it is not in the capacity of the director, however, the various demand has been made right and left saying that here it is just said service supplied by director, not in what capacity, therefore you are liable. However, it has been now clarified and cleared, only which is provided in the capacity of the director would be liable under RCM and not in the personal capacity. So this is what for director service we want to let.
Just stay on the slide. Another point for members to consider, there would be notices that I have seen, the payment made to directors. Now, the word director is to be read exactly in the name of the body corporate. You would notice there are a lot of trade associations. You will see the elections are made for the directorial positions. All these societies, when the elections happen, the people who got elected would be nominated as directors. Now, they would be paid director sitting fees every month, say 1,500, 2,000 rupees per each sitting fees that gets paid. I have seen some assessments where the notice is served. Let's say there are 20-member directors. Every month there are 2 meetings that happen. That means 2,000 per each person. For each meeting is 40,000. So 80K per month, 9.6 lakhs per annum. When 18% is levied on it, because it is a director sitting fees which is paid. Now, these payments are not under reverse charge. Just because someone is titled as director, it doesn't means that it is a reverse charge liability. It has to be director of a company or a body corporate of the said company. This is another point, just one has to keep it in mind.
One more thing, this is about personal guarantee. When the companies are taking loan, directors might have given personal guarantee. So obviously on personal guarantee also there was lot of issue going on. Either that it will be considered as a taxable supply, GST will be levied. Now they have clarified that personal guarantee, no GST will be levied. So this is just one point to keep in mind. If any of your director has given a personal guarantee, no need to pay tax, you can fight upon it.
Ashika, on the personal guarantee, the clarification they gave is notional value should not be added. If there is any actual payment made, the RCM would be applicable. Like unlike Rule 28(2), the notional value shouldn't be added.
Notional value should not be added.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Moving ahead, we now focus on the security service. This is another one specific service which is very common in the trade parlance, on which RCM has been notified. For security service, who should be the supplier? It should be a non-company. It should not be a body corporate, and it should be either individual. Recipient of service, who should be the recipient of service? Recipient of service can be any a registered person. What is the scope of the service? It is just limited to the extent of supply of human security personnel. Security services, it doesn't mean that in case suppose somebody purchase CCTV, or somebody is providing dogs as security to the army officials and all those, or to some other people, those kind of security services are not under the purview of RCM. Only supply of human personnel is under the scope of RCM. And what is the rate at which we need to discharge the tax? It is 18%. Now, when is RCM not applicable? In case of security services. The first point we need to note that RCM is not applicable in case if it is being provided by a body corporate. So if the service provider is a body corporate, then in such a case, RCM will not be applicable in case of security services. For example, if ABC Private Limited provides security services to a partnership firm XYZ and Co, then also XYZ and Co is not liable to pay reverse charge for such security services availed. Secondly, if the security services are being provided to any government department who is specifically registered under the GST for the sole purpose of deducting TDS under section 51, then also it is RCM is not applicable. And thirdly, if it is provided to a person who has opted to pay taxes under section 10 of the GST Act, CGST Act, which means he has opted to pay the taxes under composition scheme, then also the composite dealer is not liable to pay tax on reverse charge basis for such security services available. If we go to the diagrammatic approach to understand it better, first what we have done, we have classified the supplier as being registered and unregistered. Now if the supplier is a registered body corporate, then reverse charge is not applicable. It is always forward charge. If the supplier is not a body corporate, then what we will have to see, whether the recipient is registered. If the recipient is registered, reverse charge applicable. if the recipient is unregistered and the supplier is not a body corporate, then the supplier has to pay under forward charge. Now coming to unregistered supplier. Let us consider that our supplier is unregistered. Unregistered body corporate, no GST. If unregistered and the supplier is not a body corporate, but the supplier is unregistered, then if that unregistered supplier is providing to a recipient who is registered, then reverse charge is applicable. And if the unregistered supplier is providing security personal services to an unregistered recipient, then also there is no GST. So it is very important for us to check who is the supplier of the service and who is the recipient of the service. Just by seeing that security services, security personal expenditure has been booked, we cannot just come to a conclusion that RCM will be applicable. RCM will only be applicable in case the supplier is not a body corporate and the recipient is a registered person. Now coming to renting of motor vehicle. This is another major expense which the corporates book in their books of accounts. Many corporates do provide this cab facility to their employees, specifically speaking, women employees. So when it comes to renting of motor vehicle, what is the provisions which do attract the RCM liability on the recipient's part? First, we need to see that the supplier of such rent a cab service is not a body corporate and he has not charged GST at 12%. In this case also, the supplier has the option to charge 2 GST rates. He has to exercise such option. It might be 5% without ITC and it might be 12% with ITC. So in case a supplier who is charging 12% on such rent-a-cab service, then you are not liable to pay GST. Who should be the recipient? The recipient should only be a body corporate. Here the term registered is not used. If you are a body corporate, you are availing the rent-a-cab service from a non-body corporate who is charging GST, who is not charging GST at 12%, then you are liable to pay taxes under reverse charge. What is the reverse charge rate to pay taxes? It is 5%. This is very much equivalent to the GTA tax rate. Now, what is the scope of services? Renting of motor vehicle designed to carry passengers. The next term is important here, where cost of fuel is included in the invoice itself, which means your cost of fuel, if the supplier who is giving you an invoice, if he is including the cost of fuel in such invoice for providing rent-a-cab facility to carry passengers, then in such cases, if the supplier is not a body corporate, you are a body corporate and the supplier is not charging GST at 12%, you are liable to pay RCM. At what rate? At 5%. And will ITC be available? No, ITC will not be available in this case because it comes under block credit. Any cost which you incur on behalf of your employees until and unless it is mandated by law, it is not eligible for claim. Secondly, even if it is mandated, it being designed to carry passengers, motor vehicle designed to carry passengers, and if the seating capacity is less than 13 persons, then also it is blocked under 17(5).
Yeah.
Under what circumstances? Yeah.
Here, I just want to point out, if you
Mhm.
will see the other services categories which we have discussed under RCM, this is the only category which we said ITC not available because of being covered under block rent. Number one. Second, the point to be noted is the word used over here is renting of motor vehicle. You have to understand the difference of renting of motor vehicle, leasing of motor vehicle, hiring of motor vehicle. Plus, it's also important to understand the difference between transport, passenger transport service and renting of motor vehicle. Passenger transport service is like this bus where the things happen at a specific route, where it goes with specific route as per himself, but not as per the passenger. But when it happened renting of motor vehicle, you are the people, we are the people who will say where to go, which place to stay, where to stop. So that's the difference. And word is covered only renting. So if leasing, hiring, and all is there, then RCM will not be applicable. So on case to case basis, you have to see, like as obviously I said in the previous also, that you have to see whether all the conditions which is specified under RCM has been met or not, and accordingly liability will be decided. Continue.
Yeah. Now coming to the specific points where RCM will not be applicable in case of rent-a-cab service. Firstly, if your cost of fuel is not included in the invoice, RCM applicability does not arise. Secondly, if renting out vehicle is done by a corporate entity, as we saw that supplier should be any person other than a body corporate. Thirdly, if the RCM is not applicable if the service recipient is a non-corporate entity. Suppose if a partnership firm is availing rent-a-cab facility services, then RCM will not be applicable. Again, if the supplier is charging GST at the rate of 12%, then RCM is not applicable. In case, then the next point which is covered is motor vehicle is designed to carry goods, and leasing of motor vehicle, passenger transportation service, all these cases are also the cases where RCM of renting a cab will not be applicable. Now, moving on to the real estate sector. Now, this sector in itself is so big that a separate session for this will also not be sufficient enough to discuss the RCM applicability on real estate sector. But just for the sake of giving a gist on which transactions in real estate sector RCM is applicable, it is applicable in these three transactions. The first one being transfer of development rights. When the promoter pays to the landowner for transfer of development rights, he needs to discharge RCM liability on such consideration. In case of long-term lease as well, he need to discharge the RCM liability. And the third one is purchase from unregistered, which we know, which we commonly use the term 80-20 rule, whereby my total allowed purchases from unregistered suppliers must not exceed 20% of the total purchases. Now moving on to import of service. Import of service has been defined under IGST Act. What import of service? What are the conditions which needs to be fulfilled to qualify as import of service? The first one is supplier of service must be located outside India, recipient must be in India, and place of supply of service must be in India. If all these conditions on a consolidated manner are satisfied, then it is termed to be a import of service. Now section 7(1)(b). This also defines import of service. Import of service for a consideration, whether or not in the course of furtherance of business. Even if you have availed any services for your personal use, then also it shall be considered as a supply, provided consideration is involved in such supply. Then also it will qualify as import. Another way it can qualify as import is through referring to Schedule 1, which talks about deemed supply, where import or service by a taxable person. Here the term used is taxable person and not any person. Now, there is again a difference between taxable and registered person. If I am liable to be registered, then I am a taxable person. But if I have already registered, then I am deemed to be registered person. So what is this saying? A taxable person import or services from by a taxable person, from a related person, or from a distinct person as defined in section 25 in the course of furtherance of business shall be treated as supply even if it is made without any consideration. Suppose my head office is in US and I am its subsidiary in India located in Bangalore, and my head office is providing me admin or payroll services to my office in Bangalore, for which it is not cross charging any amount or it is not getting anything reimbursed from me. But since we come under the definition of distinct persons, then what will happen? Even if it is without consideration, but such services are necessary in the course of furtherance of business, then it shall be deemed as import of services. So what is important to note that in the second entry in section 7, they have used the term for a consideration whether or not in the course of furtherance of business. Here no concept of distinct or related person has been used. But when it comes to distinct or related person, the one thing you need to make sure that it is in the course of furtherance of business. Whether consideration has been charged or it has not been charged, it doesn't matter. By virtue of Schedule 1, it has been considered to be an import of service. The only condition is that the person involved in the supply are distinct persons and it is in the course of furtherance of business. So if we summarize this, import of service, consideration necessarily required, business test is not required. If we talk about import of service from a related person, consideration is not required. Even if it is without consideration, it will be treated as import. But business test, it must pass. It must be in the course of furtherance of business. Now, IGST on import of services is governed by the IGST Act. But IGST on import of goods, which we actually report in table 4B, in table 481 of GSTR 3B, it will be levied and collected under Customs Act. It will not be levied under GST Act.
So over here, the thing where we are saying consideration not required is basically we are talking about the Schedule 1. If you able to recollect, stock transfers are taxable because of Schedule 1. So even where transaction is between related party or a distinct person having no consideration, taxability will be there subject to the condition it should be used or it should be in the course of furtherance of business. Now over here, import of service, the major thing which need to be checked is, obviously we can check that my provider should be located outside India and as a receiver I should be in India. But this too will only not serve the purpose. What is the major thing which plays a role to determine the taxability is a place of supply. So it's important to check whether the place of supply fall under the taxable territory or not. So you have to check that taxable territory should fall in India. Now, here the classic example which you can take is renting of immovable property. If suppose property is located outside India, your provider of the property is outside India, but rent is being paid by the company located in India. Okay. Property outside India, provider outside India, recipient is in India. Now, those first two conditions got satisfied, but place of supply says that where the property is located will be considered as place of supply. So being a place of supply being outside India, because property is located outside India, RCM will not be applicable. It will not be considered as import of service. Similarly, if you can take example of a legal service, that you engage a person, an advocate, foreign advocate for some purpose for which Indian company is paying the fees. Again, on that advocate legal service which you have procured will qualify as an import of service and you will be liable to pay under RCM, because in this case, place of supply will be the default rule, which says where your recipient is located or where the registered person is there. So over here, registered person with recipient became India. So therefore, we will be liable to pay under RCM. Now, in this regard, I want to highlight about the fact of corporate guarantee. We discussed while discussing director service, personal guarantee. Now, here I want to discuss about corporate guarantee. Reason being, recently through Circular 225, it has been clarified that corporate guarantee is taxable. I'm not going into the dispute whether it is taxable or not taxable. I'm just limiting my discussion with respect to RCM liability. So if in case a foreign company has given a corporate guarantee for an Indian company, then obviously it will qualify as import of service. And based on that, Indian company would be liable to pay tax under us. If you see, when the foreign company is giving guarantee, it may be a case, let us assume there is no consideration for flowing. Means Indian company is not paying a single rupee to foreign company for a corporate guarantee provided. Now, previously, whatever the services we have discussed for RCM, there were specifically values were coming itself. You were not required to determine the value. Either it can be a GTA service, legal service, sponsorship, because whoever was providing you the service was charging for the service provided. So value was already there. But when the transaction comes between related party without any consideration, then the value becomes the challenge. So they have made the changes in Rule 28. New sub-rule they have introduced, and where they have set that 1% per annum of a corporate guarantee provided, you are liable to pay GST. So if it is a foreign company, it will become import of service and you will be liable to pay GST on the value of 1%. So you will calculate the value by multiplying corporate guarantee into 1% per annum. And this 1% is not one-time charge. It need to be paid till the time corporate guarantee is there. So every year 1% you have to pay till the time corporate guarantee is not over. First thing, there is the value. Now rate is 18%. Second thing is about the ITC. Now Rule 28 comes with little twist. What it says is, if you are eligible for 100% ITC of what you are paying, then even if you don't charge any rupee, I will consider 0 rupees also as a open market value. So if you are an Indian company who is engaged in providing 100% taxable service, you are eligible for fully ITC of what you are paying under RCM. Even though you have not paid tax on a corporate guarantee, you won't be liable based on this Rule 28 discipline. You can borrow this provision. However, if you are engaged in exempt, then you can't borrow it and you have to pay the tax under RCM and ITC will not be eligible. So this need to be kept in mind. Third point is about the credit card. Now there has been a cases where the directors go outside the country for business tours and all, and where they carry the credit cards and they incur the expenses. Now those credit card expenses are booked as an expense in the books of account. And it is also specifically shown as forex expense in notes to accounts of the balance sheet. Those expenses, though incurred by the director in forex, would also qualify as import of service, but all expenses will not qualify because obviously, as I said, here place of supply plays an important role. So you have to see what are the expenses incurred, and accordingly you have to see whether the place of supply fall in India or outside India. If fall in India, you have to make sure you pay the liability under RCM, And based on the nature of expense, if not covered under block credit, ITC can also be claimed. So for import of service, checking of forex expenditure is a must. So make sure if any forex expenditure you are incurring, you check thoroughly that if any liability is there, should have been paid.
Okay. Now coming to the other services which have been notified to be for taxes to be paid under reverse charge basis. Services which is provided by an insurance agent to an insurance company. Services which is being provided by a recovery agent or an individual direct selling agent to a
Okay, these are the RCM other services. We are not going to discuss in detail because these are not used day to day. That is specific to a particular person or industry. So the slide anyhow will be shared, so you can go through it. Next.
yeah.
Same. Next. This is RCM on notified
Notified.
goods. So goods are also covered under RCM. Next. We have given the list and recently metal scrap has been added. If any one of you are in the business of metal scrap, just make sure provider should be also registered, receiver should be also registered, then RCM will be applicable. So verify that and accordingly you can pay. Next. Now, the things which comes, as we have discussed, what are the goods and services covered under RCM. So we want you to verify if any liability is there under RCM or not. So we have just given you basically a steps to be followed. Go check all your expenses. And while checking the expenses, don't focus just on what GST has been charged and ignore it. Even though there may be a cases where supply by mistake has charged you GST, though the same is covered under RCM. So check your expenses thoroughly. If any of it is covered under RCM, make sure you paid it. Foreign expenditure, as I told you, you need to check for import of service. Obviously, before discharging anything under RCM, check if it might be covered under exemption, then no need. If you are liable under RCM, make sure you raise the self-tax invoice and payment voucher. And tax payment and ITC will accordingly, you have to do the tax payment. ITC will be dependent on the fact that it is not covered under block credit. And you have to report those things in your GSTR 3B. Next. So coming to ITC reporting. Now, if we see the liability part in 3B, there is specifically one table, table 3.1D, where you are required to disclose your RCM liability, which is also auto-populated based on the data furnished in 2B. So for registered supplier, it get auto-populated. Balance for unregistered, you have to add. For ITC, if it is in relation to import of service, then it will be reported in 482. And if it is in relation to RCM ITC, it will not be import of goods. RCM ITC, then it will be reported in table 483. So only for import of service and RCM ITC, there is a 482 and 483. Now, when we come to GSTR1, now in GSTR1, though there is a, I am saying that you have to raise self-tax invoice, you have to raise payment voucher. But as a recipient, you are not required to disclose any transaction of RCM in GSTR1. Only document reporting need to be done, that is table 13, which basically says you which series your RCM invoices run. So you will just write save tax invoice 1 to 22 if it runs. So only document series need to be furnished, not save tax invoice detail, no need to furnish in R1 apart from table 13. Now, there has been a cases where it has been noticed, like what was happening in pre-GST design. Pre-GST design, people were paying taxes in 1 month, claiming ITC in the next month, because this was the pattern given for pre-GST design. But under GST, what they said, in the same month you are paying, same month you claim. However, it has been noticed few people are still following. So they pay in April, claim in May, instead of paying in April and claiming in April. So to maintain that track record, and obviously there are cases where people have missed out to claim the RCM ITC also, or it may also be a case of wrong reporting. Means it should be reported in table 4A3 RCM ITC. Instead of that, it has been reported in 4A5. Now the government has implemented this RCM liability and ITC statement. If you remember, there is a ECRS statement, electronic credit reclaim and reversal restatement, which is basically linked to table 4B2, temporary reversal, where the ITC you are parking and reclaiming is getting booked. Similarly, is like this RCM liability and ITC register. So over there, what liability you are reporting, based on that liability, how much RCM ITC you have claimed will be showing. So if it comes negative, obviously you will get a warning message. You may get the notice. If the difference is positive, it is fine. Means your RCM ITC claim is lower than RCM ITC liability paid. Okay, then it is okay. But if your RCM ITC claim is more than RCM liability paid, then obviously it will be an issue. So this is what they also provided an opportunity to give the opening balance. Now it is no more available because opening balance to report opening balance date has already been over. Now another misconception which you need to keep in mind is never assume what you report as table 3.1D RCM liability will be equal to RCM ITC away, that is 4A2 and 4A3, because your RCM ITC can be lower or can be equal to, but it cannot be higher. Next. Now we will discuss about the various issues. Now there can be a case you might have paid RCM under wrong head. When I said wrong head, I mean tax type. IGST, CGST, SGST. It may be a case you were liable to pay under C and S, you paid under I. What you can do? Now you have to see is whether that expense is going to come in the subsequent month also, or whether you can adjust with any other liability. What I mean to say, suppose in this month you paid as IGST and you were liable to pay under C and S. But in the next month, automatically another RCM IGST liability arises. So what you can do is, what you have paid in the month of April wrongly under IGST, you can use the same in the month of May by not showing RCM liability to the extent of IGST already paid, and you pay C and S, which you didn't pay in the month of April. One scenario. Now, second scenario is no liability is going to arise under the head you have paid. So either you can do the thing is while filing GSTR 99C, even though you paid under wrong, tax has been paid. While filing GSTR 99C, same can be taken care by showing as an outward liability if you have under ICS, which can be adjusted with RCM wrongly paid ICS. Third, no scenario possible that what has been paid. Either you have an option, you go claim the refund, what has been paid under wrong head and pay under the correct head. Or you write while filing your 99C wrongly paid. And obviously officer may not agree at the first time, reason being because based on what we pay under ICS is the allocation rate between center and state. So if we see in totality, total tax, there is no revenue loss. But for their mechanism, they will definitely say that this tax has not come to Karnataka government, so I won't agree. However, you have a good chance to fight for it. Now coming to wrong table. When we say wrong table is, if you will see table GSTR 3B, table 4. Table 4A consists of 5. 1, import of goods. 2, import of service. 3, your RCM ITC. 4, IST. 5, all other ITC. It can be a case, it was required to be reported in table 4A3, RCM ITC, but by mistake you have reported under all other ITC 4A5. If this type of error has happened and you have identified it immediately, you can rectify that reporting in the subsequent month. If that is not possible, then the only thing which is left is your GSTR 9 and 9C. So while filing your 9 and 9C, just make sure you correctly report your RCM ITC or RCM liability if you have done any error. Now, there may be also a case where my supplier has wrongly reported. Now, when I say supplier wrongly reported is, it can be a case that expense does not belongs to me, still appearing in 2B. It can also be a case that that expense belongs to me, transaction belongs to me, but data furnished by the supplier is wrong. So now we know that government has announced IMS, Invoice Management System. But the thing is that in IMS, we only get the option to accept, reject, and keep pending for the all other items. For RCM transaction, we haven't been given this option, but it should be good if they can give it. Reason being, due to wrong reporting of supplier, at least recipient will not suffer. However, same is still not operational. Now coming to the part that if your supplier has wrongly reported, now department is blindly relying on 2B without checking the fact whether that transaction belongs to you or whether the supplier has done wrong reporting. So just make sure whether that is a stand-alone transaction, means it's a single transaction which has happened, or it's a recurring transaction which has happened. Then if that you are in connect or in contact with supplier, then definitely you write down the email, get those invoices rectified in your GST so that it get properly auto-populated in GST or 2B. Or maintain a proper record of this error so that when the department come, you can explain that you have taken your steps, you have a proper documentation to show that what is the actual figure which belongs to RCM liability. Now, non-generation of self-tax invoice. See, nobody is as of now following self-tax invoice. It's only when the department comes, they generate. So if you haven't generated, for the past also, you can generate backdated and keep it ready for you. Then another things to be noted is multiple times while discussing about the various services, we use the word body corporate, other than body corporate, recipient should be this and that. Now, the term the body corporate, which is defined, it is specifically defined under GST and it is specifically defined for RCM. Why I'm saying specifically defined for RCM, being body corporate, okay, we need to refer to company act. But when it comes to RCM, they are not limiting body corporate to companies. They are saying even LLP, limited liability partnership, will also be covered as a body corporate. So you need to be careful while seeing your applicability. If you are a limited liability partnership, for a RCM notification, you are a body corporate and accordingly you have to determine your RCM. So that's the reason we put this in an issue. So you be careful. Now, there can be an instant that there is a transaction where you were liable to pay tax under RCM. However, your supplier has collected GST from you and paid to the government. Now, in such a scenario, if that you have identified instantly that there has been this error and you have a time to rectify it, then go ahead and rectify it. Ask your supplier also to make the changes. And in subsequent bill, you can make less payment. To the extent of GST you already paid, you can reduce it from the value. You can ask supplier to rectify and you can pay your tax under RCM. Obviously, it will come with interest liability, but at least you will avoid future dispute. So if it is within the time limit you have identified, you should rectify. But suppose now time and everything is went 2 years, 3 years back, it was done. Obviously, you have a ground that there is no loss because whatever tax which you might have paid under RCM, you would be eligible as ITC. Similarly, what my supplier have paid is also eligible as ITC. But obviously, there will be a little dispute. Officer may not agree at the once, but at a higher level, a case will go in favor only because in past also, under pre-GST design, this scenarios has happened and courts have held in favor of the SEC. Another issue that you paid the tax. Okay, now if we see section 16, it specifies one more condition to claim the ITC. that I should make my payment to my supplier within 180 days. If I don't make payment to my supplier within 180 days, I have to reverse my ITC and I can reclaim it when I make payment to my supplier. I'm talking about not tax, I'm talking about the value plus tax, about the supplier. Okay, so you have to pay the invoice value to the supplier within 180 days. When it comes to RCM, if you read the condition for claiming the ITC, their condition is it should be based on self-tax invoice subject to payment of tax. Okay, or tax invoice if a supplier is registered subject to payment of tax. So if you read in this fashion, I am not liable to pay to my supplier within 180 days. And even if I have not paid to my supplier within 180 days, I'm not liable to reverse the ITC. Because over here, I myself is paying tax to the government directly. So even though there is a non-compliance of 180 days under RCM ITC, I'm not required to reverse it. I'm duly eligible the time I have availed on payment of Forex expense. I already explained under import of service. Related party transaction was my focus on corporate guarantee, which also I have covered. Rule 86B. Now, for specific taxpayer who are having turnover more than 50 lakhs per month, they are required to pay at least 1% in cash. So this I just brought in what you paid cash under RCM cannot be considered for looking for the compliance of Rule 86B. So Rule 86B is specifically for outward tax. RCM tax paid in cash you can't consider to check the Rule 86 condition. Hitesh, next. Now, another point which keep in mind is about the time limit to avail the ITC under RCM. Now, for all other ITC, there is a full clarity that it is based on 2B. Time limit to avail the ITC is 30th November or the annual return date, whichever is earlier. Okay, by 16.5 and 16.6, obviously they have extended the time limit for past 4 years. So for 17-18 till 2021, time limit got extended till 30th November 21. But when it comes to the case of RC, what about that time limit? If you read 16.4 still say invoice debit mode. And in this case also, as a recipient, we are raising self-tax invoice. So according time limit to avail ITC of RCM under section 64 will run from the date when you raise the self-tax invoice. Okay, so from that date, you have to check. Even that fact is also clarified in this circular 211. The time limit to avail the ITC will be taken from self-tax invoice where supplier is unregistered. Okay, but where supplier is registered, it will run from tax invoice. Where it is unregistered, you are raising self-tax invoice, then only it will run from self-tax invoice. Okay, so if you do delay in payment of tax of RCM, you will be liable for interest. And if you do delay in raising of invoice, you will be liable to penal consequences. But over here, the catch is what? What would be the scenario that ITC belongs to 2021? And I am paying tax on today, April 25. Because I came to now only when the audit has been done. So as the audit is done now, I came to now. So can I raise the self-tax invoice on a today date as I'm paying my ITC on a today date, and can I claim the ITC? Now, as per me, as the time limit is running from a self-tax invoice, even though it is raised belatedly, we can claim the ITC going by the provision. I know that there has been non-compliance of raising the invoice, but as recently, while discussing invoices, we said that time limit to issue the invoice has been specified. Rule 47A has been specifically inserted. Therefore, the moment I lapse that time limit, even though I am liable for consequences, by way of just raising self-invoice on today date, I can't override the time limit. So it will run from, as per me, from time of supply. For the period 1718 to 2021, you can take advantage of this circular 211. But after the provision has been inserted from 1st November 2024, I don't think so. We can take the advantage of this, and by raising belated self-tax invoice, we can say still we can claim the ATC. But Ben, sir, if you want to highlight something on this.
Yeah, I would agree with your view. 16 subsection 4, the time limit to avail input tax credit by 30th November of the subsequent financial year would be applicable for the reverse charge liabilities also. Just that we got a one-time exemption by way of the circular in the past. The wordings have little drafting documentation lacuna that had been set right in the Finance Act 24. They have made amendments in the wordings both in the Act and also the provisos, the relevant proviso in section 31. Hence, someone, if you have to issue a self-tax invoice, you have to issue by so and so time. And the time limit to avail the input tax credit would also be by 30th November of the subsequent financial year. This is something one has to take care of. Please continue.
With this, we have come to end of our first part. So
Let me pick up some questions. Let's look at those questions that have come. Is everything answered?
so few queries are there. I have paid, it is from Sachin Ji. I have paid 18% GST under RCN on car hire services. Am I eligible to claim ITC for the same?
It is a clear no. When you're paying certain things as a RCM or a forward charge, whatever is restricted as a blocked credit under 17 subsection 5, credit wouldn't be eligible, even though that is put to use for business and for the taxable outside outward supply. Since the input is restricted, the credit for the same will not be eligible.
Next query again from him only. I have paid rent. Both I and the owner are unregistered under GST, being below the threshold limit. In this case, am I required to obtain GST registration, which mandate registration for person liable to pay tax under RCM?
For RCM, there is one pretty much common issue where people read section 22, 23, 24, wherein section 22 mandates a registration once you cross the threshold limit. That is, you are crossing the turnover about 20 lakhs for services, 40 lakhs for goods, you got to register. Now, section 24, which is mandating to register, even otherwise you are crossing the threshold limit. That means even if you are sub threshold limit, you are supposed to register. Now, when you look at that, one of the provision is someone who is liable to pay reverse charge liability. They are not going to look into this. Just because there is an entry in reverse charge, it doesn't necessarily mean that one has to register. Even in the case of a rented premises, reverse charge liability is applicable on a registered recipient. So only if the recipient is registered, only in such a scenario, the reverse charge liability would arise. Only then the questions of who has to pay. But if the recipient is not registered, the reverse charge itself doesn't arise. Hence, the registration, taking registration doesn't arise.
No more question is in chat. If anybody have any query, they can unmute and ask.
Very good evening, madam. This is Ibraj from KSS Roadways. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, yes.
Sir, I have a query that we are at GTA Transporters, sir. We are doing a business for Ultratech Cements. So we are getting a consignment LR copy from the Ultratech company, and then we will raise another consignment and LR copy from KSS Roadways. We will give to the private lorry owners like hire vendors. So those peoples will file GST and we are repaying to them. Once a credit comes in 3B, 2A, 2B, I'm repaying to them. Now my officials from Hyderabad, they are telling you are liable to pay private lorry owners their higher charges. 5% GST RCM need to be paid. They are putting the notice to me.
All right. So now there is another dimension that you have brought in, sir. I
Yes, sir.
want everyone's attention. The concept of GTA, a goods transport agency, is someone who is issuing a consignment note. That means someone is undertaking a responsibility to deliver. And most times, the GTA might not be the fleet owner. So like VRL not necessarily should be owning all the cargo vehicles they are using for the transport and transshipment. In the course, they may hire a vehicle or they may hire a services of a GTO. Now, who is a GTO? It's a goods transport operator. He is not a goods transport agency. Now,
Correct.
goods transport agency is what we have covered, which is the services that are provided. Now, I may undertake a services of another GTA. Now, entry 21A of notification 12 gives an exemption saying services provided by a GTA to another GTA is exempt. Now, however, the question that we have in hand is I am taking the services from a truck owners directly. He is not a GTA. He is not going to undertake. It is like I have given a parcel to VRL. VRL has subcontracted to someone who is doing it. This is not the case. I am having the obligation to deliver, but I am taking the services from another. Now here, when we are saying that I am taking a vehicle from other, generally the transportation of goods or services by road is exempt. However, the transport owners, the persons who are providing those vehicles, you also have to see what is the type of agreement. Are you undertaking a leasing of a vehicle wherein you say that so and so kilometers traveled I am paying you, or actual diesel plus the driver beta plus the usage of the vehicle so much. Now there would be definitely a vehicle hire charges, a lease charges. That is what you should consider. Technically, this is not an entry under RCM, but the contract would definitely has to be reviewed to give an answer. Plain answer, service by a GTA to another GTA is an exempt service. Ashika, anything you would like to add?
So now what we can able to do, sir, we already appeal to the stating that we are not they are private owners, they are GTO, we have content and we appeal to the tribunal. We just appeal to them. Still the
Right.
case is not came, sir. Just waiting for the call from them. So
Yeah.
first like 2020 and 21, we got a notice of some small amount like 3 lakhs rupees. But 21, 22, we got a huge amount. We have a good business. So they are telling to pay up 19 lakhs. So I told that, so we are GTA, okay. They are private owners. They are no, we have exempted. So we are not liable to pay any RCM to them. So what are the invoices raised by us from Ultratech? Those invoices have been shown in GSTR1. So those tax has been paid also. So nowhere related private owners, I need not to pay any tax, I told them. Who are comes under FCM, I pay, they are paying to us, and those credit come to me, I'll repay to them. So this is what my content I just told to the officers. But this is right way the answer which I given, sir.
Yeah, kind of, it's a fit case to fight.
Yes, sir.
Maybe you can meet us in office and we can see if there is any documentation lacuna and if something can be improved.
Sure, sir. I can get an appointment from you, so I'll just come down to your place to discuss about this.
Absolutely. You can coordinate with Stephen and we can take it forward. Yeah.
Yeah, sir. Sure, sir. One day I will have appointment with you and I want to discuss with you because other 2 years is pending. I'm not interacting with them. I just have a hold. I told them still these two cases, the appeal should be get through. Then only.
No
This
problem.
is very typical, sir. The commissionerate also who putting that appeal, no, putting that notice, he is not have a confirm concrete about this statement. He is in 50-50 in that way. In that case, he has raised it.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Let's look at it.
Yeah, sir.
Any other questions? Anyone before we move to the next topic?
Sorry, sir. Another question is, sir. So now for rented, we have 18 branches across India. Some of the vendors rented people, they does not have GST. Those peoples I am filing in GST RCM. But the same RCM I am getting revert back in the same month or next month I'll be getting this RCM.
By the way, when you do not have any output, where is the question of you availing input?
We will be showing at a GSTR one, what is the rental option that RCM will be shown, no, sir?
Yeah, yeah, you will be paying. All that I'm saying is fine. By the way, ITC of reverse charge liability is available to utilize or avail in the same month. You don't need to carry forward. In fact, if you see the definition of reverse charge, the definition of reverse charge is more towards the RCM payable. So the moment you are disclosing a liability in 3.1, that is available as input tax credit in the same month. You don't need to carry forward to next month.
Okay, okay. But in the dashboard which shows in once I'm logged into that, the RCM column still shows the amount is remaining, some balance is lying. I'm very surprised that the amount got reversed or not. I have some.
Maybe we can take offline and see case to case basis. No
Yes,
issue.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we need to contact you means any other email option is there?
Stephen, we'll get in touch with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right.
I'm done with that.
Any other questions which is not answered? In fact, there was one question which had come directly to me. Is someone has paid a tax as RCM, and department is now contending saying that RCM is not applicable to this. You have inadvertently paid, and especially on unregistered purchases. Now, given that you have paid and you have availed the ITC, I am going to disallow the ITC. I'm going to disallow the ITC. Now, I would say this is a fit case to fight. Now, the ITC can be disallowed. Now, if some tax is not liable to be paid and if a tax has been paid, you are still eligible to claim a refund. The only catch, Section 77 would not be applicable here because it is not a transaction between intra and intra. You will still go by Section 54. The time limit of 2 years would be applicable, and you got to be careful in that aspect.
Sir,
All right.
good evening, Sam. Kanakraj here.
Yes, Kanakraj.
Sir, regarding that rent paid by a partnership firm, partner is it is a family partnership firm. One of the partner is allow his business to do that while registering that one. Whether fair rental value is to be taken for paying RCM, is it applicable, sir?
Yeah, so question for the benefit of other, me and my family is doing a partner business and it is being done in my own premises. And neither the father, mother or anyone is charging any rent and the business is not booking any expenditure. Section 15 is applicable when the fair value, Section 7 is also at a value which is in the invoice. The question is that fair value or the invoice value is applicable only if the price is not sole consideration or it is not between distinct person, between the related person. In the current situation, a related party is offering something free. Should I compute a notional value and pay RCM? The answer is no. The owner of the premises is not in the business and hence it is not a supply. So you cannot impute a notional value and pay RCM.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so let's move. Ashika, anything before we move to the next part?
No, sir.
Okay. So for the next part of the session, I have a small exercise which I want everyone to do. How do we use little bit of AI? Because this is what I'm sure everyone are hearing day in and day out. I want to show how one has to use AI in the day-to-day aspect. And today's focus is how do I build a dashboards and how do we create a dashboard? For which I have shared a link. If you click on the link, you will find a file. I want you to download the file. It is a sales order. It is a sales order, and you will be able to see the file. Can you all click on the link and download the file? So you will find a sales order of this. All right, so let's just go, because we'll go step by step. Want to understand anyone? Everyone got here? Everyone are there? Is the file downloaded and is it opening? If yes, put it as yes in the chat. If no, just want to know anyone have any trouble? Okay, so can you all open the file and are you able to see the file? Whatever you are seeing on the screen, are you able to do it? I want people to go to ChatGPT. So here is the link. If you have subscribed and you have logged in, well, good. If you do not have a login, that's also pretty fine, no issue. Now, this Excel file is having a large set of data. This Excel file is having a large set of data. And what I have done to this Excel file is we created a report, and which is a dynamic report, and
My task Raj hand up.
so we have I have created, let's say, choose the file, and this is the sales order CSV, and I am saying generate. So it has generated one report, just some report, random report. Now you can create a report and different types of formats, different type of data. Let's work. How do we do it? So for the benefit of everyone, do you all have your ChatGPT opened? If yes, can you put it as yes? I've just shared the link. All right. So I want to do step by step so that you are also with me. And by the way, this is just a brief. You can explore many things. Yeah. Now this file, for most of you, if you load this file, the GPT will not work. The GPT will not work because you are on a free plan. It has so much only it can process. What I want you to do is, let's say you copy 10 records. You can copy some 10 records. Yeah. Why I have created it in CSV, so that CSV is a very smaller set. And open a new file. I've just copied 10 records in a new file. First small 10 records in a file. Okay. Okay, firstly, I'll try with the CSV. We can do with JSON. Ideally, generally, whenever the data you work, I would want to work on JSON, because when you do with APIs, the response that you get with the JSON, maybe we'll try with the JSON. For a moment, let's actually try with the JSON. My bad. I created confusion. Let me work with the JSON only. Let me share one small URL. Let's open I have shared a URL called CSV to JSON. Can you all is this open? Okay, you may ask why. Ask data. The data structures will only what happened. Yeah. So is the CSV for is this link that got opened for everyone? If yes, please put it as yes in the chat. Yeah, so now you can choose a file. So you can choose the CSV file which wherever you have saved. So I am saving, I am taking this file, and this is the sales order CSV. This is the file that we have worked on. So I am choosing the file gets uploaded here. You can also copy paste, but you can upload here. You can automatically see all the data which is coming here. Click on this button called convert. Click on this button called convert. And on the right side, you will find a JSON that would have come. On the right side, you will find a JSON that has come. You can actually click on this button called download. It would download the full file into a JSON. So let me go to downloads, and here is the JSON. So this is the JSON file, sales order JSON file. I'm just loading here. So you all have sales order JSON file. Everyone, it got downloaded. Do you have this sales order JSON? Does this get downloaded for everyone? If yes, put it as yes in the chat. Anyone you're not getting me, please stop. No worries. We haven't started any work yet. Anyone not getting, you can put your query. If you are getting so far. We are going very step by step slowly. All right, I can see yes from 3 people. I am presuming others are also have got it. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is this file. Okay. You can open it in a notepad. You can open it in a notepad. Since it is 6 MB, it might going to take a little time. You can open it in a notepad. You will be seeing the data something like this. Are you all able to see the data? Okay, everyone are able to see. So here is the important step. Just copy, okay, format. Just copy little bit. Okay, you can copy like 2 records. You don't need to copy full. Just copy 2 records. It's only for the sake of the thing. So you will copy from the starting flower bracket to the second flower bracket. Just that we are trying to explain to the system. So come to the GPT, copy paste here. Do not copy whole of the data. If you're going to copy whole of the data, it is not going to work. That is why I wanted to work on small data set as a CSV. But I realized that if you want to actually make a practical use, you will encounter the next issue. So you can just copy the CSV here. Yeah. And let me give you a prompt. Let me copy the prompt in the chat box. And I want you guys to copy paste this prompt. Saying, this is the structure of my sales data in JSON. This is the structure of my sales data in the JSON. And so I am saying this is the structure of my sales data in the JSON format. Understand the structure and suggest key data visualization metric that would best fit to create an interactive sales dashboard, and also explain why we should each one. Okay, I am just giving it. Srihari is asking where to paste. In chatgpt.com, you have this button inside the box is where you have pasted. So everyone are here with me so far? Anyone, any doubts? Hit the enter button. So it is giving a different charts, different thing, and it would have given. So you want to change, you can actually ask profitability analysis, say, look, I don't want a heat map. You can give me a pie chart. You can ask any of this. Okay. First, let us focus in understanding. So each one of you, have you got a response from the GPT saying that these are the metric and this is the visualization type, why the metric has to be used? Some similar, each one will get a different response, but did you all get a response, something like this? Everyone got some response? All right. I can see yes. Now I want people to use the next prompt which I am giving here is I want to create. Okay. Now I want to create an interactive sales performance dashboard with okay, remove this word 5 with all the key visualizations. Instead of 5, you can change it to all the key visualization, and use the Python JS, and you can give me a feature where I can upload the JSON file. Using the JSON file, it should generate the dashboard basis the upload data. I'm also giving a small prompt that I need to upload the sales data from my local computer. I have also given an additional prompt saying that the data has to be created from the local dashboard. This is what I have. The key thing here is, irrespective of the large volume of the data I wanted to have. So give this prompt, copy paste into your chat GPT, and hit your enter button. Now you can see it is started saying that, okay, I'll give you one upload button. I'll generate all the visualizations. And it started typing the code. Okay. You might not need to understand anything. You will, you allow it. That's what the advantage of the GPTs in today thing. So as the code comes, let me remove the old HTML. So for each one of you, is this code getting generated on your screen? Are you able to see some code has come? Everyone, something which you are seeing on my screen is something similar to it, which you have no clue what is this nonsense talking, but you know something of this has come? Yeah. All right. So you have this copy button. You can click on this copy button. There is two double icons on the screen. You can hit this button. You can copy this button. Come to a folder wherever you are. We are there. I am saying a new text document. Please look at this careful. I am saying new text. I'm right clicking and giving new text document. I am saying the sales order report, but instead of txt, I am changing it to HTML. Instead of txt, I am changing it to HTML. For the purpose of yours, I'm just zooming this. You can see I have changed it to sales order report.html. It's a text document. I have just renamed it and I am just pressing enter. Okay, I just renamed it and pressed enter. And for the benefit of everyone, let me just open this file in a text. I opened this in a notepad. So you can see this as a empty document. You can see the sales report.html. You will find one empty notepad. Is it coming for everyone? Everyone created some text, some document and made it as .html. All that I'm saying is just create it as .html. Are we clear up to this point, everyone? Yes, no, maybe. Is everyone clear up to this? Okay, I can see one no. I don't know what is that no about. I have just created a text file. I said right click, new, and I said just created a text document. Just the text document instead of .txt, I've changed it to .html. That's all I have done. Okay, so I can see many yes that has come. In this .html, the notepad file, all that I am doing is this code which is available, which is written here. I have just copied the code. I am coming to this HTML. I'm just pasting this code. That's all that I'm doing is I did a Control-C and Control-V. All right. And I'm saving it. I've just saved Control-S, and you can see this is something which is 0 KB. You can see here on a refresh of it, it became a 6 KB file. Hit an enter button. You can see an interactive sales dashboard. Something has generated, which is saying choose a file. I am clicking on the choose file. And my sales order JSON, I am selecting my sales order JSON. I am saying open. Okay. Upload and generate dashboard. So there was a code inside. So the code, it is reading the data and it is generating, it would generate a dashboard. People are you guys, sorry. Are you all getting a report, something like this? How many of you have got a report? From where you created HTML, please show once again. Okay, got it. So you are getting a report. So here, even in your sales visualization dashboard, you have a button called preview. You can actually hit this button and you can work using this button also. You can hit this button and you can do a preview. You can do it this way also. All right. Now, why I was preferring JSON over this? Because the JSON file will be in a much better way when you are doing an API. I understand that some of you are struggling in creating JSON or doing it. We can do it for an CSV also. Now here, let me close this. Here I can say, alternatively, there is an issue in creation of JSON file. Can you do using CSV import? Okay, I can give this. It says that, okay, the JSON is malfunction and you want to change it. You don't want to work on CSV, change it into CSV. Can you see beautifully the same code? It is parsing the instead of JSON, a new code that has come and which is into completely generated over CSV file, right? So the system has the ability to create the data. Now on the left side of the screen, you can see the code that is coming, and let me copy this code. I can go back here, edit the code. I have edited the code. You can go to the sales dashboard. Now you can, it is saying earlier it was a JSON file. Now it is, oh, why did it not change? Why not save them? Shruti is saying we are not getting upload and generate. No worries. We will give you, I'll tell you one more prompt to give. Choose file. Now the sales order CSV. Automatically you can see the data has come, but it is into kind of a different now you can give little, I am Shruti, I'll come back to you. Now you can see the data has come. I want to make it a little better. I want to make it even this interactive little better. So I will say that, hey, look, I got it, but can you give it little background? I am giving the another prompt for you to try on. I am giving you all another prompt. You can try this. I am putting it in your chat. Because you are unable to see between the graph what graph is important, how it is, etc. I am now giving one more small prompt. Try this prompt back into your sales the thing. You are now saying that from the dashboard you created, change the style to glass morphism, then adjust the padding of the chart so that to 40%. And I'm changing it to a little pink color from instead of the white, I have asked it. Now, on the right side of the screen, you can see the code is also now getting changed. Okay, it is, we are now trying whatever you want to do, how the system has to do, system is doing it. With this, I'll give you one last input and we will play around. I will leave it to you for playing around by yourself. By the way, this is such a lengthy code and which is executing by itself. This is the code has come, I'm copying and I'm just editing the existing code, which is this, the existing code. Report.html, where is it? So I've just copy pasted and replaced the old code, sorry, report.html, and save the thing. Now I'm just doing a refresh button. Now can you see the color got changed, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 reports it prepared. I'll say choose file, and I am saying the sales order. So I'm choosing the file. Automatically the reports now will get generated, and you can see there is a padding which is done between from one report to other report. There is a padding of the data that was done. Upload and generate the report. Now can you see this is a little beautiful. Earlier one was one below there. Now you can see 4 reports in the screen, and this looks a little better. And by the way, this is interactive. This is interactive. As you go, you can see, and you can actually say, can I change it to this? You can now start ask. There is a sales happening from country to country, region to state. You can actually put whatever the question that you want, you can put it. Let's look at where is the real life scenario. Okay, I've only given you the small thing. Imagine this is the browser. Underlying data, I have chosen a file. Can I make it to static? Get the data from somewhere? Answer is yes. Can I make it into a scenario where this URL is given to somewhere, the file is elsewhere, someone just press a refresh button, they get an update of it? The answer is yes. Can I ask a query? If you look at the sales data, I have the sales by category. I have the sales by category. I want to know by weekday which sales happened. Whatever you can imagine, you can say, and you can write a prompt in your GPT saying that, hey, look, this report is beautiful, but my management wants report A, report B, report C, report D. You can ask. It will keep creating this code in the background. All that you will do is copy this code, execute here, and if you feel that the report is like, it is an iterative process till you get a fix of it. Once you fixed it and you got the right result, you can publish the results and reports to the management. Yeah, hope you got a fair idea of how you can use AI and GPT in creating an interactive dashboards. What you can do is anything which you can think of. Can I create, like in the pivot table, can I create a filters? I want to select the region, I want to select the code, automatically the data should change. I want to select the date, I want to apply filters. You can do that. The moment you apply the filters, even the graphs would become dynamic. If you want to, let's say, I want a reports with an option to select ABC, the report should change, possible. I want a radio button, either or selection, I want it to happen this way, it's possible. You have to visualize and say what you want. Accordingly, the reports get generated. So I just want to see for how many of you were able to download or generate reports. Any one of you have got reports like this on your screen right now when you work? Did you get any reports to anyone? If yes, please put it as yes in the chat. All right. Yeah, okay. There's one yes. Others, I'm presuming that, okay, you are exploring and experimenting. Any case, this session is definitely recorded and it is available for your usage. After this session, you will get a feedback form from the Stephen letting us know how the session went for you. And in that, you will get a link of the materials. And this session, the recording would be getting to you on the registered email ID of yours. I want to hear from you. What are all the things that you want to learn? One, from the GST. Second, on the technology usage of the AI, usage of the SQL, Excel, Power Queries, Power Pivots. We will curate a case, use case, which can be used and applied for you, and we will take it from there, right? So with this, we have come to end of today's session. Special thanks to Hitesh and Ashika for very patiently taking us through all the areas of reverse charge liability, and Anil for creating this case study for working with us. Yeah. Any questions before we conclude? Srihari is asking, this technical can we use to be versus books reconciliation? Pretty much. Of course, it needs a little more work. You can create your applications. All that I'm saying, anything you want, you can actually create. You can start creating. I have data set 1, I have data set 2, and how do I want the results? Let's say data set 1 is books, data set 2 is 2A downloaded from the government portal. Sorry, 2A download from the data from the government portal. I want records to be fully matched as matched. Only in the portal in one column, only in the books is another column. How do I want to match? Match based on this parameter ABC, then give me a result. You can start with using with a simple Excel macros too. Yeah, answer is yes, you can do it. Sachin, you got a great experience. Thank you. Pritisha, thank you. Yeah. Any questions before we end this session? All right. So goodbye and see you in the upcoming session.